The starboard shook violently. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Cale pulled the controls hard to the right, trying to dodge, but the old freighter groaned under pressure. "We can't outrun them," he said, teeth gritted. "Then I'll stop them," Sile said. Cale turned, stunned. "What?" Sile stepped forward. "I have something inside me. Power. I wasn't supposed to remember it, but I do now. They buried it deep." Cale looked at her. "What kind of power?" "The kind that broke worlds," she said quietly, "before they made me a slave." Cale hesitated. He didn't want to risk her, didn't want to lose her again to the same fear. "You don't owe me anything," he said. Sale shook her head. "But I owe myself something." As the enemy ship latched onto theirs, Sale walked to the back of the ship. Her skin began to glow, faintly, her eyes turning a soft blue. Symbols lit up on her arms, marks of a bloodline long forgotten. Cale watched from the camera as the air around her shimmered. Then, she stepped outside through the rear hatch. No suit. No armor, just her. The bounty hunter laughed when he saw her on the scanner. "She's walking into space. What is this?" He stepped out of his ship's docking tunnel. He raised his blaster, but before he could aim, Sale raised her hand. A bright surge of energy exploded from her palm, silent, beautiful, and deadly. The hunter was thrown back, his ship's hull cracking in half. In silence, under the starlight, Sile floated, glowing like a spirit. Her old bruises replaced by ancient power. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She just remembered. Cale pulled her back in as the enemy ship burst into flames behind them. Sale collapsed into his arms. Her breath was shallow, her skin warm. "I remember now," she whispered. "Who I was, what I lost." "You don't have to go through it alone," Kyle said, holding her close. She smiled, tired but strong. "No, I don't." Later, as Cale cleaned up the damage inside the ship, he found Sale standing by the window again. But this time she wasn't staring at the stars like a prisoner. She was standing tall, like someone who had just broken her own chains. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not treating me like a weapon. Or a slave." He walked beside her. "I see you, Sale. That's all." She turned and looked at him fully. "No one's ever looked at me the way you do." Kyle didn't answer. He just smiled. Outside, the window, the stars burned brighter, but inside that ship, she burned brightest of all. Cale's ship drifted silently near a ringed moon. Inside, Sale sat by herself, hands folded, eyes closed. She was meditating, or maybe remembering. Her powers were awakening more each day, but with them came memories she had once been forced to forget. Cale stood nearby, watching her with quiet respect. She opened her eyes. "I remember my real name now," she said. Cale raised an eyebrow. "I thought your name was Sale." She shook, her head slowly. "Sile was given to me by the slavers. My birth name was Tessera Valaritha," Kyle whistled. "That's a mouthful." A soft smile touched her lips. "In my people's language, it means starborn flame. I was born to the house of Valeri. Royalty." Cale stared. "You're a princess?" "No," she said. "I was a princess. Before my planet was conquered, before my voice was taken, before I was sold." That night, Tessera, no longer just Sile, told him everything. The Valeri ruled a world called Zenthia, known for its rich crystals and ancient wisdom. But when war came, the royals were targeted. Many were killed. Others were captured and sold to the galaxy's darkest markets. Tessera had been one of them. The invaders erased her memories with technology, locked away her identity, and sold her like she was nothing. "I wasn't supposed to remember," she said. "But your kindness, your silence, it opened something. You gave me space to breathe, to think, to feel." Kyle's voice was soft. "I didn't do much. You gave me freedom," she replied. "That is everything." As the ship moved toward a new system, a message suddenly came through. Kyle tapped the screen. It was old, encrypted, with a forgotten code. Sarah leaned in. Her eyes widened. It's from my people. A resistance cell. Survivors. They were hiding on the edge of the Erothan belt, barely holding on, but they had seen her flare of power when she destroyed the bounty hunter. Somehow they knew it was her. They're calling me back, she whispered. To lead. Kyle watched her carefully. Do you want to go? She hesitated. I don't know who I am yet. A slave? A queen? A woman with fire in her blood? Kyle took a deep breath. You're someone who can choose now. That's what matters. She looked at him. Will you come with me? His answer was simple. Always. The Starbird entered the Erothan belt 2 days later. On a dead-looking planet hidden beneath frozen rock, the Resistance base welcomed them in silence, and then in shock. Sarah stepped off the ship and dozens of hooded aliens fell to their knees. Her symbol, her family crest, glowed on her skin. Some cried. Others whispered her name. Sarah. The flame returns. An elder approached her. You live, he whispered. Sarah nodded. I live. And I remember. He looked at Kyle beside her. A human? Kyle didn't bow or speak. But Sarah said, He freed me. He protected me. He is under my protection now. The elder frowned. You would defend him before your own. I choose who I stand with, she said, her voice calm but firm. Kale almost stepped back, but then the elder dropped to one knee before both of them. We follow you, Flameborn, and your chosen one. That night, a small ceremony was held. Sarah wore a flowing white robe, the marks on her arms now glowing full and bright. Kale wore simple clothes, awkward among the elegant symbols of alien nobility. Still, he stood tall. The elder approached with a glass of moonlight water. He looked at both of them. By our law, when someone saves the bloodline, they become part of it. You may bind yourselves if you wish. Kyle looked at Sarah. He wasn't sure what to say, but she stepped forward. I was made a slave. Now I choose my freedom. She turned to Kale and took his hands. I choose you, Kale. He felt his chest tighten. You don't owe me anything. This isn't debt, she said. It's love. The room fell quiet. Then the elder said, It is done. You are now life-bound. A soft light flowed around them. She wasn't just free. She was whole. And he wasn't just a drifter anymore, he was hers. And she was his. But far above, in the cold vacuum of space, a new fleet had just received orders. Recover Sarah Valaritha alive. Kill the human, and they were already on the way. The moon was silent, but the tension inside the Resistance base was heavy. Sarah stood on a high balcony carved into the rock, her white robe fluttering in the wind. Below, Kale spoke with a few young fighters helping repair an old skimmer bike. They laughed when he dropped a wrench, and he smiled despite himself. She watched him, not as a queen, not as a weapon, but as a woman in love. He didn't belong here. Yet somehow, he did. Sarah placed her hand over her chest, feeling the faint hum of the bond ceremony still alive inside her. But peace never lasted long. That night, a scout burst into the chamber hall. Fleet approaching, Imperial flags, 8 cruisers. Gasps echoed through the stone room. The elders stood frozen. They found us, one whispered. Kyle walked in, alert. We need to move. Fast. Sarah didn't panic. She looked calm, calmer than anyone had ever seen her. They won't stop chasing me, she said. Not while I breathe. Kale stepped forward. Then let's run. We'll hide somewhere else, farther, colder, deeper. No, Sarah said. She turned toward the center of the hall. Her voice rang with fire. I will not run anymore. I have already run too far. I hid in chains, in fear, in silence, no more. She looked at Kale. I want you to leave. Kale blinked. What? I want you safe. No, he said firmly. I didn't walk through hell to lose you now. She stepped closer. Her eyes shimmered. I can't be strong. If I'm afraid of losing you. Kale reached out, taking her hands. Then be strong with me. The elders murmured, arguing whether to flee, to fight, or surrender her. But one elder woman stood up, one who had been silent until now. If she is to fight, she should not fight as a fugitive. She should fight as a bride. All turned toward her. In the old way, she said. When a Valari princess binds herself to one who gives her life, it becomes law. Her claim is eternal. Her union cannot be broken. Not by empires. Not by blood. Sarah understood what it meant. The vow she made with Kyle, if made publicly, ritually, would make her his wife in the eyes of the galaxy, a vow stronger than any crown. Kale looked confused. What's the catch? Sarah smiled. It means if they come for me, they come for us. As one. Kyle tilted his head. You're really sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. That night, in the sacred chamber of stars, surrounded by glowing runes and fire crystals, Sarah walked down the aisle carved into ancient rock. She wore a gown made from threads of moonlight silk. Her silver hair was braided with starlace, her markings glowing softly across her skin. Kale stood at the end of the path, wearing armor given by the Resistance, a gift, not as a warrior, but as her equal. No audience clapped, no music played, but the vow they took echoed into space itself. She said the words in her tongue first, then in his. You freed me. You saw me. You never owned me. And that's why I am yours. Kyle's voice was rough with emotion. I didn't rescue a princess. I just followed my heart. And now I follow you. Wherever that leads. The flame between them lit up, turning blue, a symbol of eternity. She stepped forward and pressed her forehead against his. Now, she whispered, they will know who I am. The auction hall on planet Garen 4 was full of noise, lights, and greed. Rich aliens and humans sat in the upper rows, watching the poor souls being sold. Music played. Slaves walked across a golden stage, one after another. Most were afraid. Some cried. None resisted. Then came her turn. She walked in with her head down, her long silver hair covering half her face. Chains clinked as she moved. Her skin was a light violet shade, smooth and glowing faintly. Her eyes, when she looked up for a moment, were like twin stars filled with pain. The crowd grew quiet. She is Model Z43. Alien hybrid. Personal use only, said the auctioneer. Trained for loyalty, silence, and comfort. No memory of the past. No family. Fully obedient. The crowd reacted with laughter and whistles. She's perfect for lonely nights, one fat merchant joked. No soul left in that one, said another. Kyle stood in the back, quiet. He wore a dusty coat, his boots worn from walking across planets. He looked like just another drifter. But his eyes locked on the girl. Something inside him tightened. He didn't see a toy. He didn't see a tool. He saw a prisoner. A soul. She's not broken. Kyle whispered to himself. Just hidden. The bidding began. One alien offered a full crate of gems, another offered 2 slaves in trade. The numbers climbed quickly. Kyle stepped forward. I offer one, he said. The room laughed. One what? The auctioneer mocked. 1 coin, Kale said, holding up a small, worn credit token. His last. All he had. You must be joking, a noble woman snapped. Do you even know what you're doing? The auctioneer barked. But the slave girl, Sael, lifted her head for the first time. Her eyes met Kale's. And in that moment, something passed between them. She saw something in him no one else had. Not desire. Not power. Hope. The auctioneer sighed. The law allows any bid, even this. 1 coin, He slammed the hammer. Sold. To the fool in the coat. Kale walked to the platform. The guards unchained her. She didn't move. She just stared at him. He held out his hand. You're free now. Come with me. She hesitated, then slowly took his hand, her fingers trembling. The crowd booed. Some laughed. One alien threw a drink at Kale, shouting, "She's not worth even that coin." But Kale walked calmly through them all, never letting go of her hand. Back at his small ship, the Starbird, Kale helped her sit in the co-pilot seat. She didn't speak. She curled up into the corner, eyes watching every movement, every sound. He didn't push her. He gave her a blanket, a warm drink, and space. You can sleep. I won't touch you. I won't command you. Just rest. She looked at him with confusion. Her lips parted, but no words came out. That night, Kale sat outside the room, back against the door, just in case she got scared. He whispered to himself, "What have I done?" The next morning, she woke up to the smell of food. Real food. She walked into the small kitchen corner of the ship. Kyle was cooking something in a pan. He didn't look at her. "Good morning," he said simply. She sat down slowly, her arms wrapped around her knees. "Why?" she finally asked, voice soft like wind. Kale looked up. "Why? What? Why? By me?" He thought for a moment. "Because no one else saw you." She didn't understand. Her eyes blinked slowly. "You're not a thing," he said. "You're a person." No one had ever said that to her before. Later, when the ship jumped into light speed, Sile sat near the window. She looked at the stars and then at her hands. They were no longer tied, her legs were no longer chained, but the feeling of being trapped was still inside. Kyle sat across from her. "You can leave whenever you want. I won't stop you." She turned to him, afraid. "Where would I go?" He smiled gently. "Anywhere. We'll figure it out." She stared at him for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "My name is Sale." Kyle nodded. "Nice to meet you, Sale. I'm Kale." In that small moment, the galaxy shifted. Not with war, not with power, but with one act of kindness. And from the stars outside came the sound of silent hope. The Starbird floated quietly through deep space. The stars outside blinked slowly like the soft hum of Kale's old freighter. Inside, silence ruled. But it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a girl still trapped in her own mind. Sale didn't speak much. She stayed near the ship window most days, staring at the stars. She barely ate. She rarely slept. When Kyle entered a room, she froze, shoulders tight, breath shallow. Her body flinched at sudden sounds. Even kindness scared her. Kyle never forced anything. He only spoke when needed. "Food's ready. Ship needs a few hours to recharge." "You okay?" She never answered. Not at first. One day, Kale was fixing the navigation system under the control panel. A wire sparked. His hand jerked back and hit the corner. "Damn it," he shouted, voice sharp. He didn't mean to yell, but Sale gasped from behind. She dropped the cup she was holding, and it shattered on the floor. Kale turned fast, hands up. No, I'm sorry, that wasn't at you." But she had already backed into the wall, her eyes wide with terror, her hands up in defense. Kale froze. "I'm not mad at you, I swear. I hurt my hand, that's all." He slowly sat on the ground, keeping distance. After a moment, she whispered, "I'm sorry." Kyle shook his head gently. "You didn't do anything wrong." Her breathing slowed, but she stayed by the wall. That night, Kale left a small healing spray and bandages outside her room. He didn't say anything. She found them. She didn't return them. But the next morning, her hands were clean, and his bandages were missing. It was a small thing, but it meant something. Days passed. The silence began to change. It wasn't as heavy. Sometimes she stood near the kitchen when Kale cooked. Once she asked, "What's that smell?" Quietly, like she feared even the question. Kale smiled. "It's stew, old Earth recipe. Want to try some?" She nodded once. That night she ate beside him, still quiet, still guarded, but beside him. One evening, while Kale was checking fuel levels in the engine room, he heard soft footsteps. He turned to see Ciel standing there. "Need something?" he asked gently. She looked at him for a long time, then said, "You are strange." Kale raised an eyebrow. "Most people would say that. You never order me or touch me. You're not mine to order," he said. "But I was bought. I didn't buy you to own you." "Then why?" Kale wiped grease off his hands and sat down on a crate. He looked up at her. "I saw your eyes. They weren't dead. Just scared. I couldn't leave you there." She blinked slowly. "Others left. I'm not others." That night Kyle lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling. He couldn't sleep. His mind replayed her face, those deep eyes always watching, always afraid. What did she go through? What did they do to her? He didn't ask. Not yet. But he could feel a storm hidden inside her. The next day, something changed. While Kale was flying the ship, he noticed her reflection in the glass. She stood behind him, silent, watching the stars. "You like space?" he asked. She nodded slightly. "It's quiet." Kyle smiled. "Sometimes too quiet." She moved closer. "Where are we going?" "Anywhere you want." "I don't know. Any place." "Then I'll show you a few." For the first time, her lips curled slightly. Just a hint. A smile. Later that night, Kale sat at the control panel writing a log. Suddenly, he heard a soft voice. "Kale?" He turned. Sale stood there, eyes uncertain. He smiled gently. "Yeah?" She took a breath. "My last owner told me if I ever spoke without permission, I'd be shocked." Kale's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists, but he stayed calm. "Well," he said softly, "that will never happen here." She stepped closer. "I don't understand why you're kind to me. You don't have to understand, just accept it." "I want to." She looked down at her hands. No chains, no collar. Then, without another word, she reached out and touched Kale's hand lightly. Just a touch, then pulled away. And for her, that was a beginning. Far out in space, unknown to both of them, a signal had been sent. A bounty had been placed, and someone was coming, because Sale was never supposed to be free. A cold shadow followed the Starbird. Far away, in the deep darkness, between systems, a hunter's ship locked onto its trail. A blinking red symbol glowed on its screen. Target acquired, Z-43. Priority capture. Reward, 100,000 units, dead or alive. Inside the small ship, the bounty hunter grinned. Back aboard the Starbird, things had started to shift. Kyle was no longer a stranger to Sale. She now walked freely in the ship. She even laughed once, just once, when Kale told a clumsy joke about falling into a food dispenser. Her laugh was soft, almost afraid of itself, but it made the air feel warmer. But deep inside, bruises remained. Bruises not on her skin, but in her memory. That night, she had a nightmare. She screamed in her sleep, her body shaking. Kale ran in and found her curled up in a corner, whispering in a language he didn't understand. He didn't touch her. He just sat beside her. "It's not real anymore," he said. "You're safe now." She opened her eyes slowly and stared at him, like she was waking from drowning. Then, to his surprise, she whispered, "Please, Jan, stay." So he did. 3 days later, alarms blared. Kale jumped from his seat in the cockpit. Unmarked ship, no ID. "And it's fast." Sale ran in behind him. Her face went pale when she saw the hunter ship closing in on the screen. She knew that kind of ship. She had seen it before. She had been taken in one. "They're coming for me," she whispered. "They found me." Kyle activated the thrusters. Not without a fight, the enemy ship fired. Moments after the vow, a deep alarm shook the base. "Ships inbound, 60 seconds, Kyle looked at her. "Honeymoon's canceled." She grinned, fierce and full of fire. "Let them come." Above the moon, the Imperial fleet closed in. Their commanders ordered a strike team to capture the princess. "Shoot the human if he resists," came the order, but they had no idea what waited below. Not just rebels, not just an alien woman, but a queen reborn, and a man who would burn the stars to keep her safe. The moon shook. Dust rained down from the stone ceiling of the resistance base as the first blast hit the outer ridge. Fighters scrambled into defensive positions. Generators hummed to life. Old turrets rose from hidden towers. War had arrived. Kyle stood near the front gates checking the power pack on a plasma rifle. He'd never fought in a war like this, but his hands didn't shake. Not this time, because now he wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for her. Tessera stood in the war chamber, surrounded by maps, signals, and voices. The commanders argued strategy, afraid the base wouldn't last 10 minutes against a full Imperial force. Sarah said nothing until the room fell silent. Then in a calm voice she said, "Open the vault." The elders gasped. "You mean to use the core?" She nodded. "My mother once said power without choice is slavery, but power freely used is freedom. I choose." Inside the mountain, hidden for decades, was the Valari core, a crystal heart tied to Tessera's bloodline. It had been sealed the day her family fell. Now her hands glowed as she touched it. Ancient runes lit up. The core awakened. Back outside, the enemy ships began landing. Dozens of drop pods slammed into the valley. Soldiers in black armor poured out, armed with pulse rifles, drones, and hounds bred for one purpose: capture. But the moment they crossed the boundary, something shifted. Lightning crackled across the sky. A blue shield shimmered above the base. Kyle looked up. "She's doing this." Tessera walked out onto the main platform, her eyes burning like twin stars. She wore armor now, light, flexible, and marked with the Valari crest. Behind her, the crystal core floated in the air, glowing with her energy. Kale met her halfway. "Remind me not to get on your bad side," he said with a grin. She smiled softly. "Too late. You married me." They turned to face the battlefield. Together. The first wave of enemies rushed the valley. Kale and the rebels fought side by side, covering the main gate. Sarah raised both arms, and from the core behind her, energy pulsed out like a wave. Drones dropped from the sky. Warhounds howled and fled. But then, from the enemy ship, stepped Commander Vrex, half machine, half alien, and fully ruthless. He had once owned Tessera as a slave. He looked up at her from the battlefield, sneering. "You were easier to control when you were quiet," he shouted. She stepped forward, voice steady. "You controlled a shadow. I am the flame." He raised a blaster toward Kale. "You gave everything for her, human. What did she give you?" Kale raised his rifle. "She gave me purpose," Vrex charged. His elite squad followed. The battlefield exploded into chaos. Kale took cover behind broken walls, firing at anything that moved. He got clipped in the arm but kept going. Tessera, glowing with raw energy, moved like a living storm. She twisted. The air turned blasts into dust and summoned ancient force from the ground itself. But even power has limits. As the battle dragged on, Vrex pushed closer. His soldiers overwhelmed the rebel lines. Kale was separated, surrounded. A brute knocked him to the ground. The rifle flew from his hand. Kale looked up. Vrex stood over him, weapon raised. "It ends here," Vrex said. "No," a voice answered. Sarah landed between them, glowing brighter than ever. She slammed her palm into the ground, releasing a shockwave that blasted Vrex back 50 feet. She turned, knelt beside Kale, and held his hand. "I'm here." He coughed, bleeding from his shoulder. "You always show up in style." The final wave came. and then something no one expected happened. Across the sky, a dozen lights streaked down. Ships. Not enemy ships. Old friends, old slaves, aliens from distant systems, people Tessera had once saved or inspired, answered her silent call. A fleet of survivors had come to fight for their queen. Together they pushed the enemy back. Commander Vrex, now wounded, fled to his ship, but Tessera wouldn't let him escape. She raised both hands, summoned her last strength, and sent a bolt of pure light into the sky. It pierced Vrex's ship. It exploded mid-air. The war was over. After the battle, Kale sat on the edge of the landing pad, arm wrapped, chest sore. Sarah joined him. She looked up at the stars. "They'll come again." "You know," she said. "Then we'll be ready," he replied. "You're not afraid?" He shook his head. "I have you." She smiled, placing her head on his shoulder. "And I have you." The war was over. Smoke still rose from the valley. The moons above were quiet, glowing softly as if watching from afar. The broken battlefield was filled with the wounded, the mourning, and the victorious. But deep inside the resistance stronghold, something even more powerful than victory was happening. Rebirth Kyle lay in the medical chamber, chest wrapped, his shoulder stitched. He was sore, tired, and aching all over. But when he opened his eyes and saw her face above him, calm, radiant, smiling, he forgot the pain. Sarah sat beside him, her hand wrapped gently around his. "I thought I lost you," she said. "I told you," he replied with a faint grin. "I'm not that easy to kill." She leaned closer, pressing her forehead to his. "Not just my life," she whispered. "You're part of my soul now." Over the next few days, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Slaves who had escaped, worlds that had once bowed to, empires, entire colonies where the Valari name still lived in secret, and one message stood out. A broadcast, open, public, and loud. The one known as Z-43 is no longer a fugitive. She is Queen Tessera Valeritha of Zenthia. Anyone who harms her or her bondmate will face war. From this moment forward, she is protected. Kyle blinked at the screen. Bondmate? That's what I'm called now. Tessera stood beside him, arms crossed playfully. You'd prefer husband? I was hoping for galactic hero, but I'll take husband. The resistance base transformed overnight. No longer just a hiding place, it became a capital, and in the center of it all was her. But she refused the throne. Sarah walked into the grand chamber, looked at the chair made of star steel and stone, and said simply, "I will not rule above others. I will walk with them." The room went silent. One elder asked, "Then what are you?" She looked at Kyle, who had just entered the room. "I am his wife. A queen, yes. But more than that, I am free. And I want my people to be free too." That evening, a celebration lit the valley. Not for a crown, not for a war, but for a love that changed everything. Sarah wore a gown of white light, her arms wrapped in ribbons made from old slave chains, melted and remade. A symbol. Kale wore a simple tunic, but one with the Valari crest stitched over his heart. Aliens of every kind stood together, cheering, singing, laughing, old enemies, new friends, because one human gave everything for a girl the galaxy had forgotten. And that girl? She became a legend. Later, Kale and Tessera stood under the stars, alone. The fire behind them crackled. Music echoed from afar. Tessera looked at him, then at the sky. "What now?" she asked. Kale shrugged. "We rebuild. We heal. We explore." She smiled. "And we kiss more often?" He leaned in. "I can work with that." Suddenly a child ran up, a small alien girl with blue eyes and golden skin. One of the rescued orphans, she held out a flower. "For the queen," she said shyly. Tessera knelt and took it with gentle hands. "Thank you, little one. But I'm not just your queen. I'm your guardian now." She picked the child up and looked at Kale. And he is your uncle. Kale blinked. Uncle? We didn't talk about this. Tessera laughed. We have many things to talk about. A home, a fleet, a future. He smiled. As long as it's with you. Above them, the stars kept turning. Once those stars had watched her in chains. Now they watched her dance in freedom. She had been a number, a product, a tool. Now she was a wife, a leader, a symbol, and beside her was a human who never saw a slave, only a soul. In time, the galaxy would tell stories about her. They would say she was just a personal slave, until a man gave everything to free her, and she gave everything back to love him. Together, they were no longer just survivors, they were hope.